I am Ryan, the Life Changer, and I am so grateful that you decided to join me today. This podcast is called Unlock the Power of Your Mind. Let me ask you a question. Are you ready for your life to change? Are you ready to unlock the power of your mind? Are you ready to be the best version of you possible? I want to help you. I want this podcast to give new, positive meanings to the difficult times that you faced in your life. And I want to help you become the best version of you possible. This is your time. The change is happening for you now. I know you're ready. Let's help today to change your life. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining me for another episode of Unlock the Power of Your Mind. Today I have with me, ladies and gentlemen, a guest whose journey is going to inspire the heck out of you. I am currently reading his book right now. He is the author of Journey Fitness. It is an absolutely incredible book, and I'm so honored and excited to have on the show with me today Travis Barnes. He is the founder of the gym franchise Journey 333. It is a group fitness facility, and their goal is to win the caring game and truly care about the members of their facility. So Travis, I'm so excited and honored to have you on today. How are you, my friend?
Very good, Ryan, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me on your show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that the listeners can feel a little bit connected with you, let's bring them in on a little bit of what your early childhood is like. I know you speak about that in the book as well. You grew up not too far where I grew up. So share with the listeners what it was like growing up in our area.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and it's great to be able to share that as well, because I think that many of us, I hope, are actually living our passion. And that passion for me was discovered at age 5. I was growing up in a broken home and no father around and wondering what it might be like to, you know, have a male role model. And I found Hulk Hogan and I was like 24-inch pythons, you know, so I was thinking that that's what it meant to be a man and, you know, have that kind of physicality, that role model in my life. But I discovered something very special right then. And what I discovered actually changed my life, changed the trajectory of my life, and is the reason why I do what I do today. I discovered at age 5 that being fit on the outside helped me feel better on the inside. And by age 12, I was taking other kids to the gym with me. And pretty much it's still the same. Now I have multiple locations and I'm still taking people to the gym with me, still sharing my passion. So that was just something that really helped me early on, is just establishing that love for fitness.
I love it. You talk about how exercising as it relates to hiding pain, and I thought that was so powerful. Share with the listeners what you mean in your book when you say that.
Yeah, you know, it's often that, you know, we have these symptoms that we're trying to mask, and sometimes we're not really dealing with certain issues that we need to deal with. So what are we doing to just try to make ourselves feel better? And that's the question. You know, sometimes we really need to have an encounter with ourselves and not do things necessarily that are causing us to avoid an issue unless we're really treating it. So I've learned to make exercise a treatment and not a escape, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I love that. So share with the listeners kind of maybe some aspects of your life that were difficult as you were growing up. I know that you moved around a bit and there was a lack of a father figure, and then maybe some ones that weren't so positive in your life. Share with the listeners a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So growing up, you know, missing the love and acceptance of a father often causes people such as myself and other kids growing up in a broken home to seek that love and acceptance elsewhere. And sometimes that means that we fall in with some pretty negative male role models. And that's what happened to me. I moved to Vegas in 1996. I thought that would be my pit stop on my way to Venice. Back then, everybody needed to go to Venice, where Arnold did his training so that we could be the fitness people that we wanted to be. I had a mother and a brother that were living in Las Vegas, so I went there. And I encountered some male role models at the time that I was looking up to, but these male role models were into substances. And I was willing to harm myself to get that love and acceptance that I was missing. I was willing to do what they were doing, the drugs and whatnot. And it took me on a wayward path. It took me in a downward spiral, very much the opposite of health. The healthy goals that I had in life, I started living very opposite of those. And it ultimately cost me a decade of incarceration. And when I say a decade, I mean almost 10 years of my life in prison for substance. So for the listeners, think about that for a second. How would that change your life if you made a mistake and had to go to jail for a month or 6 months or a year? I mean, by 5 years, you're thinking you don't even have the relationships that you used to have. So for me, almost a decade of my life. And while I was there, I was able to reconnect spiritually. I was able to reconnect with my passion for fitness. It was a really necessary journey in my life. The journey was necessary. People often ask me, they say, Travis, if you could take that part away, would you? And I couldn't because it's a big part of who I am today. While I was in there rediscovering my passion for fitness, there's a prison commissary that people use. It's usually tunas and stamps, things like that, tunas from the commissary or stamps to write home. And I would have people ask me for help with their fitness, maybe somebody going home that needed to lose 30 pounds. And I was training people for tunas and stamps back then. I started teaching adult continuing education on how to become a certified coach, adult continuing education on nutrition. And I learned something then. I learned that if you will do what you love for nothing, for free, that's a really good building block. It's a really good foundation to be successful at it. You gotta love something so much that you would do it for nothing in order to be able to do it for good pay and to have the kind of success in it that you'll enjoy later on. So it was a real good time in the desert for me. It was a really good journey that I needed to take in order to be who I am today.
Well, I certainly can respect and appreciate how you're able to reframe, that time there. But let's take a step back because I want the listeners to understand a little bit about, how it then got to that point, because my journey was somewhat similar to your journey. I found myself doing things that were not healthy for my body, despite the fact that I was working in the health and wellness industry and I was supposed to be promoting health and wellness. So I can definitely relate with you there. Why do you think that you ended up going down that road or using that to fill the void? Was it because you looked up to these people? Was it because it was a way to fill a gap? What was it for you, Travis?
Yeah, for me, it was definitely that back then I was not validating myself internally. I didn't have that moral compass. I was more so getting the external validation and seeking that love and acceptance that I grew up missing. And I was a naive kid coming to Las Vegas, Nevada, got my first job at the Gold's Gym. And, one of my mentors, I was thinking that he was going to teach me what supplements I should take. And back then, bodybuilding was probably even bigger than it is today, but because now there's been a lot more and more functional fitness and trends towards CrossFit and whatnot. And back then, we had these healthy icons or these healthy looking icons on the cover of Muscle and Fitness and Flex and everything else. But internally, they weren't very healthy. I mean, these are people that there was all kinds of things going on in the Gold's Gym. People smoking pot before they trained because they believed it lowered their cortisol levels. People that used cocaine as a diuretic. People that were using, of course, anabolic steroids. And just this naive small-town kid come to Vegas, I saw some things that I never would have saw had I not moved out west. And I was susceptible to those things. And that's why I talk to a lot of young people today that are growing up in broken homes about, that people that truly care about you are not going to ask you to do things that are going to harm you. But back then, I just was naive and willing to do whatever it took to get the acceptance of others, because I didn't have that internal validation.
What I found interesting is, and for message for the listeners to take away, you talk about, how to handle, you said at that time, you're looking up to your manager or your superior at Gold's Gym, and then when you got into the fitness industry and found out, hey, this is a lot different than what I thought it looked like from the inside, it was kind of like your dreams were being let down. And so many times in life, I think that people will look at something from the outside and then thinking that once they get that external object, it will bring them the internal happiness. And really all that does is set them up for double failure when they get into it and realize, hey, this isn't what I thought it was going to be at all. And they feel that their dreams, had failed. So how did you handle that mentally, or what advice would you give to those people so that they can handle that, or maybe not even be put in that situation?
Well, and here's the thing too, on a business perspective, when I think back to my manager, there were some things about, working in the Gold's Gym where I started off expecting to be healthy and expecting to help others that were let down. And when your dreams get crushed, will it be a tombstone or will it be a stepping stone? I believe back in 1996 that there was a spark that was put in me, and it took about 20 years to really light that fire. It took until me opening up Journey in 2013 that I finally was able to really let that fire burn. And back in 1996, here's what happened. I had a manager, and, I was signing people up, and I said to that manager, I said, hey, after a couple of weeks, the people I'm signing up, they're not coming in. Maybe I should call them. And he said to me, hey, kid, you don't wake a sleeping giant. And I was like, what's a sleeping giant? And he says, we got 80% of our customers that pay and don't come. We don't call them up. And I was like, oh, because I thought that I got into this to help people. And it didn't seem very helpful to just sign people up and count on 8 out of 10 paying and not coming. And so back then I was like, everything that I was thinking, I was going to go to Vegas and learn what supplements to take and be even healthier than I was back home, and that I was going to be in a business that was about helping people. There were definitely some things along the way that you could say crushed my dreams, but do we put up a tombstone, or do we make that our stepping stone? Do we let it inspire us to do something different?
Yeah, love it. And so share with the listeners then what that pinnacle was for you going down the slope of unhealthiness. I know you went from 200 pounds and muscle down to 160 pounds, but there was also, you also met your wife at that time too, right? Or future wife. So share with the listeners that part of your journey.
Yeah, so getting involved with the different substances at the Gold's Gym and eventually losing my job, pretty much due to substance abuse, because we don't act in accordance with good work habits when we're getting heavy into addiction. And eventually I started using speed. Vegas was a 24-hour town, and you might say that I wanted to live all 24 hours, or it was just a little bit of the evolution of the substance abuse. And so just being very unhealthy at the time, and I did, amazingly enough, meet an amazing woman along the way. And that woman stood by me through a decade of incarceration. That woman I'm still married to her today. We started Journey together. And that to me is one of the greatest miracles, because 98% of people that become incarcerated for as long as I did definitely would not have a wife to come home to. So I'd have to say that the kind of love that I had as far as love and support was a real motivator for me, a real inspiration to help change my life and help be who I am today for people.
Yeah, love it. And so I thought that was absolutely incredible. That was the thought that was going in the back of my mind, how incredible your wife, Cindy, is to stick by you and provide that unconditional love for you throughout that entire time. You were able to get connected with your faith and also get connected with your passion in a time where probably not a lot of other people would consider that a quote unquote ideal environment to do so. How did you do that, Travis?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And for the listeners, whatever your faith, we all usually have some sort of higher power. So I'm not necessarily advocating one thing over another, but I will tell you my story. Here I am, 150 pounds, very unhealthy, I'm in a cell, 23 and a half hours a day. this book cart comes by. And at first I wasn't even a reader. I mean, I now read a couple books a month, but I wasn't even a reader back then. And so the book cart comes by and I'm like, oh, no, thanks. I'll do push-ups. Then the book cart comes by again. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you have on there? 23 and a half hours a day locked up in a cell, you start to need a little entertainment. So the book cart guy says, well, I got Louis L'Amour of the Bible. And I said, I'll take Louis L'Amour. And I know God was probably laughing at me. He's like, I finally got you alone. I'd like to talk to you. I needed to kind of get you removed from things so that we could have this time. And I'm reading Louis L'Amour. But then finally I ran out of Louis L'Amour's and I started looking at the Bible, and there were just different stories that came to life for me. Jonah was caught up in the belly of a whale so he could get his mind right. I kind of felt like I was someplace to get my mind right and do what I was called to do. And then, I'd read like the story of Joseph, and Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, had to spend 13 years in prison to be humbled so that he could be exalted. And I felt like I was going through a humbling phase. There was a time in my life, especially with addiction. Addiction is a very selfish thing. It's really all about you. And so for me, it was, stories like that really started to make things come to life. And I realized that I was being preserved for something greater. And I started asking myself, as I read things like, God gives us the good desires of our heart. Like, what were my good desires, and how did I get away from that? And for me, I got reconnected with that passion that I had at age 5. And I got determined that I was going to use it regardless of if I was in prison or when I came home, that I was going to live my purpose. And I felt like I had a hang on my wall. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, and that there was a plan for my life, and that this was part of it. And this was the life-saving part of it. So I started making that prison. I made it my college. I made it my fitness center. I made it my sanctuary to just get spiritually healthy. And that was my journey. That was the important journey for my wife too, so that I could be the husband that she needed me to be, for my daughter, so that I could be the father, so that I could be the son, so I could be the friend that I am today, so that I could be the business owner. The business owner, actually, I started learning the importance of systems from prison, and that's why I have a franchise today. So if you want to get into that, I could share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'd love for you to share, Travis, is how, for the listeners out there that are in their own prison, in a sense, or maybe they've allowed their mind to become their prison, how do they get out of it? And, or if they feel like they're going through a difficult time, how can they find purpose in that time the way you were? Because you were able to find purpose in a time, like I said, where I'm inspired and in awe of you by how you were able to do it. But for the listeners that are dealing with their own prison, what advice or actionable strategies do you have for them on how they can turn it into something for them rather than to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question, because often the biggest thing standing in our way is ourselves, right? We have to get out of our own way. And that means that we have to overcome our mindset, our limiting beliefs. The question is, what's your vision for your life? Like, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? If you knew you could not fail, what would you do? And so then we have to ask ourselves, well, then why aren't we doing it, right? Why aren't we doing it? So for me, the vision for my life was, of course, a life with fitness, where I was helping people through fitness, because I knew that that was my purpose. Now, some of the listeners might be listening. They're like, well, I'm not really sure of my purpose. When passion and purpose collide, you're walking in your God-given destiny. So what are you passionate about? I always like to take people back to the idea that, there's probably 5 things that make your soul sing. For me, it's speaking, and it's leading, it's spending time with family, it's coaching, it's mentoring fit pros to fitnesspreneurs. And when we find those 5 things that make our soul sing, we got to figure out how to say yes to that more often and no to the things that are taking us away from it. So when it comes to overcoming mindset, I think another good practice is to start believing in yourself. And in believing in yourself, that means that we have to do things like daily affirmations. Like, I could have came home and said, all right, I'm a convict. I did 10 years in prison. Nobody's going to want to hire me. I'm a failure. just maybe just live off society the rest of my life because I was such a failure. But instead, I told myself a different story. I told myself that it was still possible for me. I like to encourage people to get a thing called the 5-Minute Journal. That's a great little book off of Amazon.com. You can get it for less than $10. And it asks you every day to start your day with 3 things you're grateful for, because your gratitude will determine your attitude. And as Zig Ziglar says, your attitude will determine your altitude. And then after that, it asks you to write your affirmation statement. What is that you need to start telling yourself about, the great person that you are? Take a few adjectives, a few nouns, and describe yourself as that father, husband, mentor, business person that you are, and tell yourself the things that you do that you're proud of, that you change lives, right, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
We're here for changing lives. And remind yourself of that daily, because that's who you are. And get rid of that negative script. Take out the head trash and throw it out.
Yeah, amen. So you were through the incredible work that you did while in prison and some of the youth ministry that you did and whatnot. You were able to get your sentence reduced, but you still served 10 years. And you say in the book that you were actually happy about that. And boy, if there was ever reframing, that is certainly reframing. What was going through your mind at that time? How were you able to reframe that?
Initially, I was sentenced to 188 months. And I remember when that gavel came down, because part of my sentence reduction was the fact I was improperly sentenced. And then they even gave me some mercy for the things that I had been doing when I was resentenced to 10 years. But when the gavel came down and it was 188 months, I felt like it was over. We were still trying to do the math and figure out how many years that was, because it was just so much and so heavy. And then as I started getting connected to my spirituality, as I started turning that curse into a blessing by allowing it to impact me positively, realizing that my adversity could become my advantage, right? And how is that? Well, I'm going to give you a quick little story on how my adversity became my advantage. When you're in prison, you get a prison wage, maybe 10, 20 cents an hour for cleaning up. And that's typically how most people get paid. Now, I learned that there was a place called Unicor, and Unicor was a federal furniture factory where if I waited on the list for a year and if I got one of the top grades in a department, that I could make up to $1 an hour. Now, $1 an hour is pretty good for a wife that's at home because she's struggling and having her family send her care packages of shampoo because she can't even afford to buy the shampoo that she wants. And I obviously can't ask her to help send me any money, and I would like to try to send her some. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get in that federal furniture factory. They'll pay me $1 an hour if I get in there for the top grade. And then if I'm willing to work a second 8 hours a day, I can make $2 an hour. And that would give me enough money to send money home. So what I did is I found out, how do I get to be the top grade? And they said, you have to get next to somebody that was going home. Well, there was this guy named Ryan, interestingly. And this guy, Ryan, was going home after 20 years, and they were all nervous because nobody knew how to do what Ryan did. And I said, well, can I sit next to him and write it down? And they're like, sure, have at it. So I sat next to him, and I wrote my first operations manual for the furniture factory based on what Ryan did. Then I come home, and I get hired into a chaotic fitness business, and I wind up writing an operations manual for them, systemizing it, but only because of what I did in prison. And right, and now I have a franchise, and the reason I have a franchise is because I opened up this business with a playbook of systems. So just realizing that everything that was happening to me during that journey, that it was an opportunity to learn. It was an opportunity to take business classes, take psychology classes, expand upon my fitness certifications, help others, be part of that youth ministry that ministered to young kids, and just really let even my time in prison have a purpose for my life, then and now.
Oh man, that is just so incredible. And for the listeners out there that are going through a difficult time right now or struggling to be able to connect the dots, I pray and hope that as Travis is speaking to you, you feel comfort and solace knowing that there will be a time where you'll be able to look back at what it is that you're going through and realize that it serves a higher purpose, and that you will be able to figure out how to use this time for you and not to you, but only if we're able to embrace that time, right, Travis? Like you took this time and embraced it. You didn't sit there in self-pity and wallow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all have to remember that diamonds are made under pressure. Gold is refined by the fire. So if you're going through something right now, the question is, what is it making out of you? What if instead of giving you wounds and scars, it's giving you muscles? I know my time gave me the muscles that I needed to be the person that I am today. And no matter what you're going through, there is that perspective as to how it's giving you muscles. You might not be able to see it right now, but I promise you, hindsight's 20/20, and you see it later on.
Amen. So share with the listeners, you get out of prison, the sentence is reduced a little bit, still serve 10 years. You get out of prison. What is the next part of your journey, Travis?
So the next part of my journey, interestingly, I do have a strong faith that there's always been a hand of God on me, because I was brought to a organization, and they were a pretty faith-based organization. They were physical therapy and fitness, but it seemed like everybody that I talked to had a lot of spirituality going on. So they were willing to give me a chance despite my past. And I was in one of those organizations where maybe this is just part of the plan, but I had a manager where the owner would call, and every time he'd call, that the manager was missing and I'm just not there. And I said, well, I can see the writing on the wall here. So looks like I won't have that manager very long. And so I believed in myself enough to say, when the time comes, I should put in for that position. And so I did. And as I mentioned before, I systemized his business for him, because it was so chaotic that nobody opened the same, nobody closed the same, nobody answered the phone the same way. None of our customers were getting a consistent experience. So I said, when I became the manager, I said, why don't we write down our best practices and agree what we'll do so that we can give our customers a consistent experience? And I went from manager to chief operations officer of that business because of what I was doing. He had a dream to put a fitness center next to all 11 of his physical therapy clinics, and I helped him put 5 of them up before he decided that he wanted to be the face of his business.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible.
It was an amazing journey, and I'll always be grateful to him. Again, it's an attitude of gratitude that helps me to get through life, because the truth is the owner of that company did let me go a couple days after Thanksgiving, and I had a house that had been flooded to the second floor. I was living in a FEMA trailer. You want to talk about compounding. After a decade of incarceration, you come home, you work hard for somebody, but then we get our first house. You know, my wife had been waiting 10 years to have a home of her own. I get her a home of her own, and then there's a flood, and we're flooded to the second floor. And then months and months go by of working on this house nights and weekends, and we're still living in a FEMA trailer, and the owner of the company decided to let me go. And then I had an important decision to make. My important decision was, we're at the holidays. I have a wife and daughter. What am I going to do? There were certainly more stable options than starting my own business. But again, I had this path that was pointing towards the fact that there was a plan for my life. I was invited by somebody that my father went to church with to come check out their space. And this space was just crazy because there was a salon adjoining it that the landlord owned. And as I toured her salon, she had this Christian music playing in the background and quotes on her wall. And I'm like, wow, can you even do this in a public place? You know? And so she asked me what I thought of the space, and I told her, I said, well, I'm living in a FEMA trailer right now, and, you know, my house has been flooded to the second floor, and I'm on an unemployment check. And so I said, your space is very nice, but I don't think I'll be able to do anything with it right now because I don't have any money. I don't have any resources. And she said, I don't care about any of that. All I know is God told me that you're supposed to be here.
Oh my God. Wait, take a step back. What made you go on the tour of this facility? Was this kind of just like a dad set it up for me, and so I feel obliged to go there, or what was going through your mind prior to walking in?
Yeah, it was a dad set it up for me. I felt obliged. He can be a persistent guy, and you know, he was asking me to come someplace that was actually even a half hour away from my nearest client, you know, which, I had a non-compete with the previous business that I worked with, so it was probably good that it was a half hour away from that respect. But on the other hand, I didn't know anybody that I was going to hopefully gain as a customer. So that was intimidating as well to start a business. But when she said that, my wife and I drove away that day. And I said, well, who can argue with God? I said, it seems like to do anything besides fitness would be spiritual suicide. I know that I'm meant to do this. And her being the supportive person that she's always been, she said, then let's do it. And we started with 14 people in a 1,300 square foot location. And we quickly grew to about 100 people where we were busting at the seams and we needed to rent the space next door and punch a hole in the wall. And then we grew in 4 years to 5 locations, and we started changing the footprint of that to 4,000 to 6,000 square feet. So it's been a great journey, and now we're franchising across the country. Interest in Florida and Providence and all kinds of places right now.
Wow. I gotta ask you more. We gotta dive deeper into this because I think that's so powerful, the meeting with this individual. So did you get goosebumps or feel the Holy Spirit amongst you when I'm assuming she looked at you dead in the eyes and said, Travis, I don't care about, she looked you dead in the eyes when she said it, didn't she?
Yeah, I could tell that I was there's times in our life when things happen where you can't explain it any other way. I heard a quote the other day that said, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. So I finally agreed to go to this space that my father ran into this person at church and I just did it because he was so adamant. And then I'm in there and I'm touring around and it just has this different vibe. There's Christian music playing and there's quotes on the wall. And I said, well, this seems like such a nice lady, but what's she going to say when I tell her that I don't have any money? And when I told her I don't have any money, maybe someday when I get my finances together, I can come back. She said, I don't care about money. God told me you're supposed to be here. And I was just blown away. It was
like, that is so deep, Travis, because you took it like something inside of you, God, right? The Holy Spirit directing you to say, go there. I mean, God, you could have said, I don't have the money. There's no point in even going to the meeting. It's a half an hour away, but I have a non-compete, and this guy, he screwed me over at the last minute during the holiday season. Hey, he would probably come after me. Or you could say, like you said, going out on my own right now is probably not the most financially secure thing for me to do. I mean, there could have been a million reasons in your mind or excuses that you gave to yourself to not go to that meeting, and yet you went there anyways. Like that. Do you ever look back and reflect on that and realize how powerful that is?
All the time. And that's why I feel like I'm living a calling. Like people talk about, having mission statements and things such as that. And I truly do feel like I'm on a God-blessed mission. Like that there was a plan for my life and I was way off track when I was just involved in the Vegas Gold's Gym because it was very, let's say, superficial. There were a lot of bodybuilders training there for vanity. There were strippers that were being trained there and things such as that. And nowadays what I do, a story that I'm very proud of, is help a 76-year-old man to lose over 150 pounds and stop walking with a cane. And we do life-saving stuff nowadays. And that's the thing where I knew from the time that I was once incarcerated and caught up like Jonah in the belly of a whale to get my mind right and start listening to what the true calling was for my life and being willing to help people that really couldn't pay me anything at all, but just to live my passion. And then coming home to a physical therapy clinic where I was training people that truly needed help, that many times you knew that they wouldn't be alive another few years unless they started getting fit, losing the weight. And then to have that appointment, and I'm talking about an appointment, like a godly appointment where God says, listen, I know you think that you're done. I know you think that you've been let go, you're fired, you got no money, but I'm not done with you yet. I still have a plan. It was amazing.
Oh man, I got goosebumps on me right now as I'm speaking to you. And so what message do you have to the listeners that are feeling beaten down. Maybe they feel like, what's the point in going on with life, or what's the point in trying to start my business when my last business failed, or what's the point in getting into another relationship when the last relationship I left I was hurt or cheated on, or whatever the case may be. What advice do you have to them, Travis?
Don't give up, number one. I used to have this sign on my wall, and it was a really interesting one. You can Google this, and it's a stork eating the frog, and the frog is actually it's choking the stork. It's like it says never give up, right? Because the frog is refusing to be swallowed. And it's a Winston Churchill saying. It's got a cool little thing, but never give up. God gives us the good desires of our heart. There is a plan for our life. We need to look only so far as our passions to find our purpose. And if we're willing to overcome our mindset, the mindset that's sometimes limiting, the mindset that's been jaded by failure, that says, oh, I can't accomplish this because of what I didn't accomplish before. If we're willing to overcome that mindset and just believe in ourselves and believe in the fact that there's a plan for our life and just keep on going, even when you feel like giving up, I promise that there's something waiting on the other side. If you've been brought to it, you'll be brought through it. You just got to build that faith. You just got to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And to keep showing up. And I know that showing up is only a portion of it, but sometimes showing up is doing the very best that we can do, right? You showed up to that meeting, and then you showed up with the business and did what it was that you needed to do and built it starting from 14 people. I mean, that's incredible, right? You take the meeting and then you start out with 14 people, and then you're at 100, and now you've got 5 locations. But it all started because you showed up that first time.
Absolutely, Ryan. I think I've heard it said before that 90% of success is showing up. And I think that's the truth, right? You just have to keep on taking, what is the next step? I will just keep on taking the next step. Even when I can't quite see where I'm going, even when I may doubt where I'm going, if I just keep showing up and keep taking the next step, you're going to get to someplace good.
Amen. Showing up and then taking the next step, however big or small that may be in your present situation, continuing to take the next step. So let's talk about ultimately what we have been talking about here, which is now Journey 333. Share with the listeners a little bit about this franchise. I know now you've got 5 locations. You're going to be at the International Franchise Expo in New York City. I definitely am looking forward to popping by to see you there. What's new and next on the horizon for your business?
I'd like to continue this theme of the show today to tell you how Journey 333 came to be named that. So we were originally Journey Fitness, and with franchising, we all need to trademark what we're doing. So we looked up the trademark for Journey Fitness, and we couldn't have it. We couldn't have it because Journey 2 Fitness was already trademarked, and it was too close. So I started, brainstorming and thinking about things. And I said, well, we offer fitness coaching and nutrition. Maybe we're Journey 3. And I said, well, that's a small number with things like 10 and 110 and 212 out there. So I was like, Journey Trifecta. And my wife said, well, it sounds like a race. And then we're like, Journey Trilogy. Sounds like 3 stories. Journey Trinity. Sounds too religious. Journey 3X. And then we're like, oh, Triple X. That sounds like the wrong club. I went to sleep one night thinking about 3, and I woke up thinking about 333, because Journey is a place where we do fitness coaching and nutrition. We consider ourselves to be about mind, body, and spirit, and we really serve 3 customer types. The 3 customer types are this: we serve a working professional, we serve those that want to grow bolder, not older, some might call them golden years, and we serve an adventure or obstacle course racer. So I woke up thinking about this 333 number, and I immediately Googled it. And when I Googled 333, and any of the listeners can do this as well, when you Google 333, it comes up to where you're seeing this number because there are angels around you letting you know that God wants to be a co-creator with you in the universe. I was like, what? And, it was like top of the Google. I was like, this.
Wow.
And so I call up my lawyer, my franchise attorney, and tell him that we're thinking of Journey 333 instead of Journey Fitness. And so he does an initial search, and he says, that looks really good. And he said, one thing you might want to do is have your main number, if this works out, end in 333. And when he said that, I said, oh, wow, that's been our number all along, 607-735-0333.
No way.
I said, that's pretty cool. And so then I was sharing,
Wow.
I was sharing with this friend of mine too. I said, check this out. Check out what's happening with this journey number. And this friend of mine says to me, he says, well, did you know 333, that's God's phone number? And I was like, hey, man, if I knew God had a phone number, I would have called him a long time ago. And he said, no, there's this part in Jeremiah where it says, call on me and I'll answer. And everybody talks about it because 33.3 in there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I've never seen that on any shirts or logos or, things before. So there was just all this confirmation that once again, we were heading in the right direction. And I believe that the reason that we're blessed is because we have such a strong focus on our customers. We truly are about helping people. We're in an industry where sometimes there's group training going on and there's people getting lost in the shuffle. And our goal is to make sure that we are training the group the same way that the individual gets trained, meaning that they still experience all the same benefits of having a coach, even though they're being trained in a group. So interesting about Journey 333, just again, telling me that I'm on the right path.
God's favor is so much on your path right now, for sure. So this book, I am 41 pages in. Absolutely blown away. Share with the listeners where they can get your book, and if they're up in the upstate New York area by you, where they can maybe visit you at one of your facilities.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. They can get the book on Amazon.com, Journey Fitness. I recently co-authored with about 10 of our coaches as well, 52 Amazing Journeys. And that was number 1 in 5 categories on Amazon.com. That one talks about the journeys of 52 of our members. We chose 52 because we thought it'd give you one story of inspiration for each week of the year. We have locations right now. We have a corporate location, but the ones that they can visit are in Corning, New York, Horseheads, New York, Ithaca, New York, and Sayre, Pennsylvania. Looking hopefully soon at having some in Orlando, Florida, and Providence, Rhode Island. So exciting times there as well as we look at franchising.
Awesome. Well, if you ever happen to open one up in Johnson City, Binghamton, Vestal, Endicott, Shenango Valley, at any of those areas there, you have to let me know, and I'll make a trip back up to my hometown where I grew up to come see you and support you.
Thank you very much. That's very possible. So thank you.
And I look forward to meeting you, Travis. Are you going to be down at the Fitness Expo here coming up in New York City?
I may be. I will be checking my calendar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for sharing your story today with the listeners. I think that your journey is incredible as a man of faith. You're an example of what can happen when we stay faithful to God, and God has favor on our path. So thank you so much for your time today.
Well, Ryan, thank you for the honor of being on your show. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All the best. God bless.
God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast today. My prayer is that it has helped to change your life, to make a positive impact in your life. And I just want to let you know that every single day, the first goal that I write down is I have changed 1 million lives. So ladies and gentlemen, if this podcast helped to change your life today, I would ask you to please go on to iTunes, rate, review, and share this episode with somebody else who you know will benefit and have their life changed. Thank you again so very much. It means the world to me. Go out there and be great today. Make a positive impact in the world.